So there is just one further question I'm asked to ask. That's why I'm being discourteous enough to have my phone out, because that's how I've received it. Mrs. Carroll, this is one question I've been asked to ask you. Is it possible that Ms. Barlow said that the government would delay making an announcement so that more beneficiaries might die? In other words, a prediction as to what the government might do, rather than saying that the government should do that?
That isn't what I remember, and it's not what I wrote and said at the time. And so I think I would have written what I recalled at the time in what I said. Okay. But it's a possibility, I suppose, but I'm not sure about that.
So that's the further question I was proposing to ask. Sorry. Thank you. No, that's the further question.
Right. Well, just taking that just a little further, your exploration of the possibility. How soon after the meeting had finished did you make a note on anything in writing of what had been said?
I tended to write notes in my notebook fairly soon after meetings, because I was going to be reporting to the board on the meeting. So to make sure I'd got everything down and I didn't forget things, I tended to make a note very quickly. So I'd come out of the meeting, have a cup of tea, write things down generally is what I would do. So I would imagine that's what I did then. I don't remember exactly, but that's what I tend to do. So I should think quite quickly.
So you don't always do it, but you can't remember doing it on this particular occasion?
I don't always do it, but I would say that it was highly likely that I would have done.
Now, when we come to the board's first discussion about sending a letter, in the minutes of the board, there's no reference to this having been said, even though there is in the letter which you subsequently drafted. Why not?
Our board minutes always contained a summary of what was discussed. It wasn't tending to ever have a sort of a word for word or a description of everything that was said. It was always a summary, and so it followed that practice. It wasn't seen as something so exceptional, because I think there had been the sense that it was something several board members had heard similar themes of things being said before, that it wasn't noted as something that needed to be documented because it was so unusual and shocking that nobody had heard it before. Now,
the second sort of line of questioning, just to explore this, which you will understand that I have to do, is you're a chief executive, and you had worked as a nurse. You would, I suppose, be one of the first to understand that if someone says something which is objectionable, racist, sexist, demeaning of another, you call it out there and then.
I agree, and I think it took time for it to sink in, and I didn't. I wish I had.
Now, can you help, apart from saying, well, it took time to sink in, why do you think it took time to sink in, rather than being something you responded to straight away?
I think it was reflective of things I'd heard a lot from our members and beneficiaries of the trust. So it didn't stand out in the shocking way it seems when you hear it for the first time. If that makes sense, it was very reflective of things I had heard. And so it wasn't completely, almost I would say not completely unexpected. I'm not sure that's quite the right phrase, but I think the feeling at the time was, oh goodness, I think probably more than anything else. And then as I thought about it more, it's like, actually that really is a terrible thing to say.
Now, again, as chief exec, you will have come across grievance procedures and complaints. Presumably there's a policy in the Haemophilia Society for the staff dealing with such things.
Yes.
And the general run of grievance procedures and complaints procedures is that the advice is the very first step is to take up the issue with the person involved.
Yeah.
So if you'd adopted that course, you would have written to or phoned or some way contacted, even through a third party if you felt you needed to, the person whom you thought had said what you said. You'd have got in touch with Jan Barlow and said, look, I've been reflecting on this. This is what you said. Did you really mean it? Because I don't think it's appropriate.
I haven't thought about it like that. And generally complaints are complaints made about you or the organisation. So I didn't think about that, it didn't enter my head in any way, and I clearly didn't enter any of the board members' thinking, because I think if they'd thought that, they definitely would have suggested it. I can't tell you why we didn't, apart from we didn't think about it.
As a nurse in one of your former career, you would have understood that the nurse's job is to be a patient advocate, in part. That's how they're often described. And that may involve saying pretty unpleasant things to a doctor who's out of order.
Yes.
No question of hierarchy here. That's what your job is. Did you ever do that, do you remember, as a nurse?
I remember questioning why things had been the way they were or the way things were done. So I do remember, yes, of a consultant, actually. I do remember that, yes.
And did you take that up with the consultant, himself or herself?
I think, if I'm honest, I was quite junior at that point, and I reported it, sort of talked to the sister on the ward about it much more than directly myself.
And did you learn from that experience that perhaps the appropriate thing to do is to take it up with the person who's responsible in the first place? And you may get nowhere, obviously, but that at least gives you a sound basis for going on. And here, had you done that with Jan Barlow, you might have had the response, well, I never said that, and I certainly don't believe that, or, well, everyone knows that, or whatever the answer might have been.
You may be right there. You may be right there. I think we took it up in a way by passing it on to the MPs, but you may well be right in that, yes.
I mean, that's like going to the press without going to the individual, possibly.
Yeah, and I'm very sad that we ended up in this situation and have learnt from this.
Well, that's all that I'm going to ask.
So might I just go back to one document just to clarify something arising out of it, because you asked a question about the minutes, and it's really for the benefit of those listening so that they follow. It's WITN 3078010.
Yes. And I think it's at page 5.
It is. If we go to page 5, because the question and answer might have not been entirely easy to follow for those who don't have the document. In the minutes of the meeting on the 4th of February 2015, we can see at the bottom of the page that you, the minutes do record you reporting the statement that you say Ms. Barlow had made, and in terms similar to those which appear in the subsequent letter, should wait for as long as possible. So it's in the discussion. If we go over the page and look at the actions, is this right? The actions themselves don't then make reference to including this statement.
That's right, yes. That may then have happened. The draft letter went back and forth, as far as I remember, for board trustees to sign off. So in those discussions, there may well have been, should this statement go in or not? I don't have access to those now, and so I don't remember, but I should imagine that would be the point in the sort of the draft of the letter back and forth to say, should this go in or should it not?
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
That's the only matter I wanted to clarify, sir. Mrs. Carroll, is there anything further that you would wish to add?
I don't think so.
Well, can I thank you very much? It's not easy evidence to have to give, and we very much appreciate you having given it, and it must be all the worse having had to wait in order to come late on a Friday to do that. So it's very much appreciated. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So
Next
that's
week.
it for this week. In terms of hearings, we resume on Tuesday with the evidence of Mr. Mishcon at 10, and then the evidence of Mr. Murray, Mr. Alistair Murray, at 2.
So 10 o'clock on Tuesday. Thank you very much.